When I was in college, I was sold the promise of a dream Fang job. All throughout high school, I remember seeing news articles about how Google's the best place in the world to work, and Facebook's now catching up too. They have foosball tables and free drinks from vending machines, and obviously, the big tech salaries are nice too. The goal of the term FANG was to identify this group of companies that from 2010 to 2018 or so were the places all of us recent college grads wanted to work. It was the thing you went to college for. I honestly felt like when I was in high school, I was picking my school based on where would get me to Google the fastest. Obviously, things change. I ended up at Amazon and then Twitch and now running my own stuff. What's interesting to me is how the mindset around FANG hasn't changed despite the industry moving so far away from the trends. So let's talk a bit about what happened to Fang, why all of these companies are laying off so many of their engineers, and how we should approach talking about these companies. I had an Amazon internship. I worked at Twitch. I got a pretty generous stock grant that when Amazon stock skyrocketed ended up being an insane amount of money. I don't talk about this much, but there was a point where my total comp hit $480,000 a year, and I wasn't even senior. That same exact comp, if nothing had changed, would be closer to $250K right now due to the impact of stock pricing, which is just insane when you think about it, that your salary can go down by almost half based on forces well outside of your control. But that's the reality a lot of people are experiencing now at Fang. Two major things caused the chaos we are seeing now: the windfall of cash that tech companies were receiving and the general fear of good engineers going to your competition. For a long time, Microsoft and Apple were the two hardware and software companies for computers. And if an engineer didn't go to Apple, they would go to Microsoft instead. And there was a lot of trading between those places, and the average engineer would work at the same company for like 7 to 20 years. Now we see engineers going to hundreds of different companies, going from big to small, small to big, hopping all over the place, often changing jobs as much as once a year. And that flexibility in the market on the engineer side has resulted in the value prop of FANG companies going down significantly. I certainly know when I got my FANG job, it wasn't everything I was hoping for. And I was working super hard to try and convince myself that it mattered and I was making impact. I pushed so hard to make Twitch better by being there. And I had impact that I'm proud of, but in the end, it didn't really matter. My impact did not affect my compensation or the success of the business. It just affected how well I went to bed at night and how comfortable I was with the work I was doing. As such, when I started talking to smaller companies, I found opportunities to make more money, have more impact, and be more satisfied with myself. And a lot of the best engineers in the industry have been noticing this too. Well before the current state of the market, to be frank, around when COVID was starting. I know I personally changed my tune on Twitch when I didn't have the free lunches and dinners every day and the team in the office to hang out with. And suddenly my job felt less like part of my identity and this important thing that was part of me, and more like just a thing I did during the day, like a website I would go to or the laptop I would use. I felt less like a Twitch engineer and more like an engineer that happened to write code for Twitch, which gave me the freedom to realize I wasn't happy and leave. I am far from the only person that had this experience. And the result is a lot of people who went to these FANG companies that previously would have been there for 7 to 20 years, ditching and exploring other opportunities. This, combined with the recent change in the market, which has resulted in lots of these companies having stock values plummet. And now they have to take a step back, look at the money on the table, realize they have too many employees for the amount of money they have. And that's why we're seeing all of these crazy layoffs. It's not because the companies are evil. It's because the money isn't there anymore, and the hiring decisions were based around money and necessities that no longer exist. The companies are no longer competing to keep engineers from going to the other places. They're competing to make sure they don't go out of business because their spend is too high. That's a very different reality from the one we were living in, especially since the FANG companies were all picked based on the speed their stocks were growing. That is the real reason FANG is dead. The category we chose for FANG of companies whose stocks are growing really fast, their stocks stopped growing, they started going down really fast, and as such, the companies aren't hiring more, they're letting go of people, and the salaries of the people who are still working there are going down, not up. This is utter chaos, but it's the state of the market, and it means more than ever, you have to be on top of your shit and bring value to the places you go. It's a lot easier to bring value in a way that is understood at smaller companies than large. And even at larger companies, we're seeing a trend away from a back end team and a front end team towards vertical teams that are focused on individual features. And as such, a lot of engineers are already working on small teams like a startup. They just happen to be at a big company. So you can make impact in that vertical. You understand how to do the dynamics with that team. You can take the tech you use there and use that at a startup, and vice versa. You can work at a startup, learn how to build a whole thing yourself, and then go to a big company and maintain that vertical within the company. This architectural shift has allowed for companies to entirely change the way they're hiring and managing their teams. Rather than having a pile of back-end and front-end engineers, they now have different feature teams focused on specific things, and if a feature doesn't do well, they can disperse that team across the company or let go of it entirely. This shift is resulting in an entirely different relationship between employees, their teams, their companies, and their salaries. And all of this combined with the state of layoffs has resulted in dismay and distraughtness. People aren't feeling great, and it sucks. The market is in a weird place right now. I personally think Fang died when COVID started, but now that the stocks are going down, Fang is dead. I hope that we take this opportunity to reflect on why we're all in tech and what jobs exist and what we want to do with ourselves. Because that promise we were sold as kids of getting the job at Google and being super rich and happy, it was kind of a lie.